Hey, welcome to another episode of the Fit Growth Machine podcast. I'm Brian Rosenthal, your host, and today we have Matt Edmondson. He's best known in the world of e-commerce as his own e-commerce businesses have generated over $50 million in worldwide sales. That's a lot of money. And he has coached companies with a combined turnover in excess of, listen well, $100 million. Matt is the CEO of Orion, a group of companies dedicated to helping those who sell online deliver an e-commerce wow. Stay tuned, as before talking to him, let me tell you that this episode is brought to you by BSR Digital. At BSR Digital, we help e-commerce brands that want to scale their business to the next level through Facebook, Instagram, and Google Ads. Yes, even after the iOS 14 update. Now more than ever, we understand that it's really important to level up the marketing and design a solid strategy, as what used to work doesn't anymore. So if your e-commerce brand lacks a solid plan and professional team to increase sales, we can help. The same way we have helped more than 1,000 brands like yours for over a decade. To learn more, you can visit us at bsrdigital.com, and you can also email us at hello@bsrdigital.com. Now, as promised, I have Matt here with me. Hey, Matt, thanks for being on the show.
No, thank you, sir. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Great intro. BSR, it's fascinating that you've helped over 1,000 brands. That's a lot of brands right there, right?
Yeah, we've been in business since 2013, so we have had the pleasure to help many brands every year. And of course, everything has changed, right? E-commerce now is not the same as before, is it?
Wow, that's the biggest understatement of the year. But yeah, no, it's totally true. And you're right. And again, you mentioned it, right? Since the iOS changes, they're still causing chaos for people, aren't they? On the old paid media there.
You know, I'm thinking about returning to my old job as a computer scientist or programmer, right? No, I'm just kidding. But definitely things are more challenges for companies. But hey, as we are going to cover in this interview, challenges are everywhere, not only technically speaking, but the external factors, inflation, supply chain, recession. So why not adding the extra spicy, I don't know, ingredient to this and have the technical side of things screwing us too, right?
Yeah. Thanks, Apple, for keeping it spicy. No, we appreciate that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But anyway, talking about e-commerce, how did you get started in this crazy world?
It was just by accident, really. I started doing website design as a sort of a side hustle back in the late 90s. A friend of mine came to me. He wanted a website for his church, and back then, you still pay a lot of money for websites now, but there was no Squarespace, there was no Wix. Everything had to be hard coded, and so it cost thousands to get just a simple 2-page website. And so I said to him, listen, bud, if you buy me the software, and if any of your listeners are sort of old school, it was Dreamweaver. That's what it was, the software he bought me, which enabled me to start creating the sites. I just figured it out as a side hustle, and we built his website. And it didn't take too long. It's like 3 or 4 years after that, I wrote my first e-commerce website, because I'm like, e-commerce is a thing that's taken off, and it just seemed like to me to be a bit of a no-brainer. So I called a friend of mine who was one of my suppliers in an old job, and he sold tanning products. A company called Bliss. They sold tanning products, and I said to him, listen, I'm going to do this e-commerce site. It's basically selling stuff online, because no one really knew what e-commerce was back then. I said, I've no idea how it's going to go. I really don't know if I'm going to sell a single product, but I'm going to write this website as a test. I need a product to sell. Do you mind if I sell your products online and just see what happens? And he's like, yeah, no problem. Just, an order. Don't feel like you have to order any. He was great, actually. I didn't have to order any minimum order quantities or any of that sort of stuff you have to think about. And so we wrote this website called TanMad. And we started selling tanning products online, and every day we sold products, and I'd go down to the post office, with my 4 or 5 orders or whatever we'd sold that day, get them stamped, and we'd ship them out. And sort of my love of e-commerce was born, and that was in 2002, so 20 years ago now.
Wow. How do you promote that, by the way? I guess no Facebook ads or I don't know, Google, no Google ads, probably.
There was no Google ads, there was no Facebook ads. It was all basic SEO. But to be fair, back then, there was there was so little competition online. You could get ranked on page one on Google super easy. And so yeah, that's what we did. We did well on search engines, and that's how it worked. Yeah, there was definitely no paid media back then. You could do things like you could pay for ads to appear on like MySpace and stuff like that, and websites that had a lot of traffic would pay. You could pay them like to advertise on their website. We never got into that. It was just all organic growth. It was great.
Yeah, definitely a whole different world, different tools, different approaches to things. And if we fast forward to today, what are you doing now? Right now, you're running your business, Orion. So what do you do there?
So Orion is sort of, yeah, it's a great question, Brian, and it's sort of grown and come out of my love of e-commerce. So first and foremost, we have our own e-commerce websites. I'm a big believer in that. We do the coaching, we do the consulting, but I can't coach in something that I'm not doing. I've got to take my own medicine, if you like. And so we run our own e-commerce businesses. I sold one last year. We had a big beauty business, and we sold that last year. I now focus on a supplement brand called Vegetology. And if your viewers are watching, I'll just show you a little product there. And Vegetology is a sort of a vegan supplement, which we ship worldwide just by the truckload, which is just great. And so, yeah, we do that. Orion is a done-for-you e-commerce service. So we do fulfillment and marketing and all that sort of stuff for other companies as well. So, but yeah, predominantly my love of e-commerce is still there, and we still run our own websites, and then all the other stuff is nice stuff to throw on top.
That's awesome. So what do you think? What do you think of the? I mean, you started like way too many years ago. So what has changed? Probably is a question, but it would be too broad. So if we say in the last probably 2 to 3 years, what do you think that has changed versus when you started in e-commerce?
The key thing, I think, is the demand. In other words, because of the pandemic, because of lockdown, the demand for e-commerce grew at such a rapid pace. It was on a certain trajectory, and then that just went crazy because it was the only way you could get stuff. And everybody realized all of a sudden, actually, e-commerce, it's not just about buying and selling products like supplements online. It's like a local restaurant can use e-commerce to grow their business. And okay, well, now we sort of understand how that can work, and we can do click and collect and on food and all that sort of stuff. And like a local shop a small corner shop can do e-commerce, and you can buy your groceries and he'll deliver it locally within an hour or two. Do you mean they actually so I think the demand for e-commerce has grown, and our understanding of e-commerce in all these different sectors has also grown. Our willingness to do stuff that we weren't doing before, really. And I think that's been probably one of the biggest game changers, that where before you couldn't really justify doing e-commerce, now you can't justify not really doing it, if that makes sense. So yeah, I would say the demand for it, and conversely, the problem with that, of course, is the competition increases massively. So I think a lot of things now have to be thought about differently to 2 or 3 years ago. But yeah, for me, it would be demand.
Yeah, for sure. And these last few years were crazy, right? When COVID hit, we've been having this conversation already, but with some other guests, that when COVID hit, many brands were scared, and then they were having the best year probably in their history, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was great. But then what's happening, or what do you see at least that's happening this year so far in 2022? Because we saw probably a really, really huge demand when COVID hit. And then what's happening right now? Is it still there? Is it probably, I don't know, is it over the, I mean, the good days of COVID or after COVID, or what do you
The
think?
good days of COVID. I think it's an interesting one. I think the answer is it depends on the industry, right? The good days of COVID is great. But I think it depends on the industry. So, you know, I think people still want to go to stores to try on clothing, but I think the demand and the buying habits of people did change during COVID. So there is still a higher demand for retail online and people's willingness to go online and buy stuff. I think the problems that we're seeing, especially worldwide shipping, I think that has sort of cooled people's desire a little bit, because it was easy, I use that term lightly, but it was pretty straightforward to create a website and put stuff online. The trouble is the infrastructure has not been able to keep up, the main one being delivery, right? So I think delivery companies have struggled. I think companies have struggled with staff, you know, getting people in to help. So I think the change of the world through the pandemic has meant that supply has not been able to keep up with demand. So I think there's been some problems. There's some problems with stock. You know, even for us with the supplement brand, we still have issues getting hold of raw ingredients, which before the pandemic was straightforward. But now the guys that, you know, that manufacture the raw ingredients, they've not got the staff, they've not got the ability to ship it, and they themselves can't get certain bits to help. Do you know what I mean? There's a consequence in the supply chain. And I've never seen anything like that before, you know. So we've been hit with raw ingredient problems, we've been hit with packaging problems, you know, just different. It's really fascinating to me, stuff that we didn't suffer from before the pandemic, we are now suffering from post-pandemic still.
Yeah, for sure. And from a perspective or from an angle of getting of how companies get traffic and sales nowadays, have you seen a change? Have you seen, I don't know, that e-commerce are leveraging certain channels that they weren't before, or is it more or less the same as, I don't know, 5 years ago?
I think the principles are still the same. I think obviously there's been changes, for example, with Facebook ads, with the iOS updates. I think people have looked at that and gone, goodness me, we need to think differently. We need to add these extra things. And then you look at the massive rise of TikTok. And so, but it's still social media marketing. You've just kind of changed the platform slightly. So the principles are still there. The fundamentals are still there. I think what I'm seeing more and more is a polarization of Amazon to the rest of the e-commerce world, right? So Amazon is still this giant and it is still growing. And I think people are sort of slowly starting to realize that the way we compete with Amazon is to be much more authentic, to be much more our own voice, rather than just trying to be a website which just sells commodities in a sort of faceless kind of beige, boring way. You're seeing a lot more of websites having personality, having sort of people much more involved in much more authentic, organic language to their sort of tribe, if you like. And that's been fascinating and actually really good. I think really, really good. There was a report that came out, I don't know if you've seen it, the Endelman report on trust, which was remarkable. I think they surveyed they reached out to 38,000 people in hundreds of countries around the world, and they were asking them about trust, like, who do you trust? How do you know, what's your trust like with government? What's your trust like with business, and so on and so forth. And one of the interesting things out of that report was worldwide now, 58% of people buy from brands based on their beliefs and values. Well, this is quite extraordinary, because before we didn't really do that. Certainly 20 years ago, everyone was just buying stuff, but now we kind of think, well, hang on a minute, I'm gonna buy stuff. Does it come in plastic? Does it? How do we ship that? You know, and what's the impact on the environment? Who do you stand for as a business? You know, what's going on inside your business? And I think that that's quite a wonderful thing to see, but I think it brings a whole new set of challenges. So I do think you're seeing this growth in brands who are values-led, culture-led type organizations, and they're bringing that out to their clients, which creates insane levels of repeat purchase.
Yeah. Have you mentioned that? I couldn't agree more, because in fact we've been discussing, I don't know, with the it comes to mind the e-commerce director at Overtime and many other e-commerces like Patagonia, the clothing brand, on how they leverage. Well, Patagonia is, the first thing you will see on their website is not buy, buy, buy. It's like they want to save the earth, period,
Yeah.
right? They don't care about anything else on the front end, and that's on their website, right? And the unique value propositions, all the stuff. And on the other hand, you have brands like Overtime. They leverage a lot of collaborations because they want to first stand for something. So, for example, they created their own something like, I don't want to say things that are not accurate, but if I remember correctly, they created like their own young basketball league, right? And they encourage young, you know, people to actually play basketball, and the top players get featured with their own Shopify store, with their
Yeah.
own brand. They design the whole brand, and so they do many things. And we have interviewed many people on this show about standing for something as a brand, whether it's sustainability, if it's like the veganism world, or if it's, I don't know, something else, right?
Yeah.
So I totally agree. If you people buy, it is said, as a guest said, um, people don't buy products anymore. They buy experience from brands that create an experience for them and
Yeah.
that stand for something, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. I think, you've got to understand that. And this was brought home to me recently, actually. So on our site, one of the things that we did was we introduced subscribe and save. And when we first launched it, we made a silly error when we first launched it, in the sense that when we did subscribe and save, we basically said, you have to have something sent to you every 60 days because of the way the system worked. And it was like, we went with a 60-day cycle. And a whole bunch of customers got in touch with us and said, hang on a minute, if I have to do something every 60 days, that means I'm shipping twice as many parcels. And how does that meet with the value of sustainability, which is one of our big values? And we're like, you know what, guys, you are totally right, right? So our customers, in effect, are going, we don't understand this. And this is why I just love what I do, to be fair. You get these people who are so passionate about it. They've got the same shared values. So there's accountability in that. If you've got transparency, you've got accountability. So I wrote a letter to everybody, an email to all the customers going, you know what, I've got to hold my hands up here and say, you know what, there was a mistake made, and that's on me. I'm the MD of the company. I'm the guy that ultimately has all the final decisions. Within 2 or 3 days, we turned it around, and it was a lot of work, but the whole development team cracked it, and we got the problem resolved. And it was interesting to see the response from customers once we'd done that. People are willing to accept that you make mistakes. They love it when you apologize and they see you've taken action based on what they think, and they can see the results of that. So even something that we missed, we've managed to turn around, which was great.
Yeah, I mean, now I guess that it's best if we as brands take a customer-centric approach, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yes. If I'm involved, yes, I think you have to take a customer-centric approach. That doesn't mean I think the customer's always right, and it doesn't mean you only think about the customer, because I don't think those two statements are correct. I think you have to think about the customer, you have to think about their experience, but you have to think about the business and the team and the planet and all these other things. But I think the customer experience has to weigh heavily in all of that. It has to have a heavy bias, and you have to think your organization through from a customer point of view, definitely.
Yeah, I one of the latest interviews is with a brand that they create products based on the customer's suggestions.
Mm-hmm.
So they create new flavors, for the products based on what they say. So what flavor would you like to see next? And sometimes they said it's challenging because they ask for things that are, not easy to put together, right? And to produce. And it's great because when they can do it, they feel instantly how they love it because they feel heard, right? And for example, this other company, it's a backpack company, right, for doing hiking and all the stuff. And they call them like this group of loyal customers. In a way, I forgot, but basically they send them samples so they can validate the products even before launching them, right?
Yeah.
And that way they said in the interview, like many things they spotted before launching that because they thought as a brand that it was the right thing to do. I don't know, the
Mhm.
size of the straps or if they were thinner or thicker or whatever. And they gave them feedback and said, no, this shouldn't be, you know,
Yeah.
put it up this way. And those are probably some examples. I don't know if you have any, or if you, why do you think that brands should be, I don't know, looking to creating an experience like this, or if it's even easy, because it's easy to say that, but is it to putting it together?
Well, my experience here is with our beauty business, the one that I recently sold, we changed our business model, right? So a friend of mine, a guy called Rich Rising, who's an absolute legend, he drew on a napkin for me. We were out eating a meal one night and he drew on a napkin a triangle. And in one corner of the triangle, he wrote the word price. And the other, he wrote the word quality. And in the other, he wrote the word service. And he said, a brand is known because either of price, i.e., they sell a product really cheaply, right? They're known for their products. They're either good quality products or they're bad quality products, but you aim for good quality products. Or they're known for their customer service. So like Zappos, for example, amazing customer service. That's how they're known. He says, you've got a triangle here. He said the problem he found with most businesses was in their heads, they tried to be all three. In other words, they tried to sell a quality product at a low price and have amazing customer service. And Rich was really straight with me. He said, at the moment, Jersey, which was our beauty business, he said, you have got a quality product and you have got a cheap price. And we did. We went for the sort of the cheapest pricing. And so we had high quality skincare at discount prices. And that's how we grew as a business. But fundamentally, our customer service was awful. I mean, when I say awful, that's unfair. It just wasn't great. And so following that, we made a decision. We made a really clear business decision, which said, right, I'm going to stop pursuing the low pricing, high quality product model, and I'm going to pursue a high service, high quality product model, which means fundamentally, I can't be the cheapest because I need margin to create good customer service. Okay. Because I didn't have the resources that Amazon did to buy customers, and sync all of this. So our prices went up. And the first 12 months after making that decision, honestly, I thought I questioned almost every day whether I had made the wrong decision because our sales fell. Right. So for the first time in 6 years, our sales year on year fell because our prices had gone up. But what we noticed the second year was we stuck with our guns. The second year, our turnover rose by over 20%. It was the biggest year on year growth that we'd had. And the reason for that is because with a lot of products that we had, that it's not like you buy them every day. Customers would buy maybe once or twice a year. It took over a year for the repeat customer rate purchase to kick in. So we weren't attracting as many new customers because we didn't have the low price. But what we found was the customers that we did have started to enjoy the customer service we were now giving. And as a result, our repeat purchases went up. After 12 months, that had filtered through to our best ever year. But I had to hold my nerve for the first year, if that makes sense.
It's pretty interesting what you said. I mean, because of two things that I noticed at least. One, you said years, not days, weeks, or months before things started to, pick up again to work again. And that's something many entrepreneurs don't do, right? They don't wait the right time. They give up, or they think probably this is not working. We need to change course again, right? And what was the second one? I had a second one, I promised. But right.
It'll
And
come
then
back.
yeah, it will come back, no worry. But I love that. It's uh, you. I don't know. I forgot. No worries. But then sticking with that, I know you're a coach, right? And I know
Mhm.
you might get crazy questions or not, right? But what are some of the top questions you get from entrepreneurs? Could be either, I don't know, new entrepreneurs or e-commerce owners or well established that they don't know how to get to their next level or next step.
Yeah, so there's a very definite journey that an e-commerce business will go through, right? And that journey is quite fascinating. So depending on where you are on that journey, depends on the kind of questions you get asked. So if someone's at the very early stages of e-commerce, what I call the gather phase. So they're gathering information, they're doing their research, figuring out what they're going to do. Usually the questions you get asked around there is like, how do I find the right product to sell, right? How do I know that this is going to be a winner? What kind of platform should I use? Should I use Shopify? Should I use, WordPress? Should I use Magento? Should I, yeah, all those kind of things. Which route should I go down? How do I start doing Facebook ad campaigns? Those kind of questions. And then you move on, and you've gone from the gather stage to the launch phase. So now our website's up and running. And by far the biggest question in that group is the question which says, well, hang on a minute. I've got the website going, right? I've even figured out how to do a bit of paid media to get traffic to my website, but nobody's buying anything. So I've got traffic, but no sales. How do I resolve that? And then the next phase you go into is what I call the growth phase. And so this is where you start to grow, and you start to become much more established. And so then you're looking at, well, how do I scale? Should I move from Shopify to Magento? Do I need to get a bigger platform? Do I bring this in-house? Do you know what I mean? There's all these kind of questions, usually related around scale or IT. And then you move into what I call the flywheel phase. And this is where you've actually cracked a lot of things. And and I measure this in 3 different stages. So are you within the top, like 40% of the websites? Are you in that? Are you in the top 70%? Are you in the top 5%? And this is how we sort of measure that phase. In your industry, where are you? And that flywheel phase, man, those questions are all about staffing. Have I got the right team? How to build the team? I'm growing so quickly. How do I hire people? How do I do warehouse management? How do I do the fulfillment quicker? Who do I partner with? What agencies? What's the strategy? How do I think 2 years down the line? This thing is happening so quick. So yeah, you get asked an awful lot of questions, all depending on where they are on that journey.
Yeah. One question that I get, not pretty often, but whenever I try, I engage with a brand that is doing things on Amazon already. I don't know if you get this, but it's like, how can we save Amazon's fees or commissions when doing
Yeah.
things outside Amazon, right? And I don't know if there's a way around it. It's like they have their social audience, they spend millions in marketing, they're super well known, so probably it won't be cheaper for them to acquire traffic and sales outside Amazon. I don't know if that's the right approach to, or the way to think that you will go outside Amazon to save the commission. Probably is what you said earlier, right? About getting your brand out there, and you standing for something, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I think, again, that's one of the big questions with people on Amazon, isn't it? Is I've got Amazon over here, but I've come to the realization I don't own any of these customers. I've heard stories of Amazon shutting down suppliers overnight so I could have no business tomorrow, and that scares people. Amazon do take a big chunk of the profits. And so there's a whole bunch of questions. And then there are things that you can do within the Amazon ecosystem. I know, for example, and this may change in the future, but I know, for example, if I send traffic to Amazon, and they buy, if I send it direct to that page, well, Amazon rewards that rather than if they've, if Amazon sort of promote me. And so they give me kickbacks and so on and so forth. So my experience in this, as limited as it is, but my experience with Amazon is actually if I intentionally grow Amazon and intentionally grow my website, both things can grow together. Where I am very nervous for people if they come to me is if they are Amazon only and they've not taken the time to develop their own website. And they're selling, which you normally see if you're selling stuff on Amazon that is a generic brand or there's no specific brand, like I'm selling just a fidget spinner that 5,000 people are selling. I just happen to be really good at selling on Amazon. Well, okay, I can get the case in some respects that you don't want a website for that. But when it comes to building your own brand, I do get nervous for people that are solely on Amazon and not doing Amazon and their website and building both together.
Yeah, I guess when there are some stages, there are stages for company growth, but in this case for e-commerce growth, right? I guess, I don't know, the product or the offer validation, right? That there's demand for what they are trying to offer. And let's say that there is, right? What's next? Do they need to build a team? How do they go through the hiring process, or what are the key elements that an e-commerce brands in the early stage need to think about having?
I think, again, it depends on the industry and it depends on who's around you. So, for example, you take paid media. Now, you guys do paid media. You do paid media super well at BSR. So, me as an e-commerce business, for me to hire people that are as competent and as well trained as you guys, I've got to have a pretty big business to stay on top of that, to bring that quality of person in and to sustain them with the amount of work I'm going to give them. And I think at the moment, there are so many agencies worldwide that can help you with real specific problems that would be much better than hiring people. And I think that's one of the interesting developments, isn't it, over recent years, especially with the work at home thing, and you can get really quality people now working on your team for a few hours, which is all you need. And so I'm not in a rush to hire new people, especially if they're required to be a specialist in an area. I think that's something to bear in mind. But conversely, I think if you're taking an agency on, you have to treat them as though you're hiring them personally. You can't just take an agency on willy-nilly. You've got to do your research, you've got to do your due diligence and figure out, otherwise it could go very wrong very quickly. So I think it all depends on the industry. It all depends on what's going on. I don't know if I'd be in a rush to hire people, but if you do need to hire people, my experience is you hire on the basis of competence and culture, not just competence. In other words, what I mean by that is you could say, I need somebody, for example, who can come into my business who is a great copywriter. I want to hire a great copywriter. Okay. And you can go and hire someone who technically is brilliant at copywriting, but that same person can consistently, day in, day out, knock out rubbish for your company because they're not tied into the company's culture. They don't get it. They don't get you. They don't get your values. And I think it's always better to hire on the basis of culture than on the basis of competence, because you can always train competence, but you can't train culture, if that makes sense. So I think if you are hiring, and especially if you're hiring rapidly, if you're scaling, this becomes super, super critical. This whole process becomes critical because certainly key employees, you've got to hire on a cultural fit. Otherwise, you are in trouble very quickly.
Yeah, 100%. I know that since we mentioned that already, you're a coach and you get a lot of questions. Is there any program or any way that you are helping currently or in the near future businesses get started or scale to the next level?
Yeah, thank you for asking. Yeah, we do. We have, over the years, we've done all kinds of things, Brian, if I'm honest with you, to help people. We've obviously done the coaching, the consulting, which is fine if you're a corporate that's got a fair few, dollars in the bank to pay those kind of invoices. But so in the past, we've done a lot of online courses. We've done online courses to help people, which have been great. And the feedback on them has always been really good. But I think more recently, I've noticed, you may have noticed, and maybe it's something that came obvious to me through lockdown, I don't know. But the amount of people who actually complete an online course is ridiculously low. And I'm not just talking about any courses we've put out there. I'm just, as an industry as a whole, online courses struggle in the sense that only about 15% of people complete them. And so you create overwhelm. So we've reimagined that for this year. We're going to launch in September. Our founding member launch in September is something called eCommerce Cohort, which is sort of like, it's a coaching mastermind, for want of a better expression, that's accessible for people who are just starting out, but it's also going to be accessible for people that have been in e-commerce for 20 years, or longer than me. So yeah, we're excited about that. We're going to be launching that real soon.
That's awesome. And what's that going to cover at a high level, probably?
So yeah, the in my head, whenever we've done coaching, right, and whenever I've grown an e-commerce business, there's a very definite framework that you can see works in e-commerce. And in e-commerce, I think you've got these 7 key areas which you have to hit as a business to do well. An obvious one would be marketing, right? So that's going to be one of the key pillars of e-commerce, one of the key tenets of your framework. And so what we do in the cohort, in this mastermind, is each month we pick one area of e-commerce and we deep dive into that. So every year you go around, we call them cycles, you go around the framework twice. And the reason we do that, rather than just saying, well, let's do an e-commerce mastermind, is because we want people to be much more balanced. We want people to be much more well-rounded in their e-commerce business. When they're running their business, they have to think about different areas. I remember with my own business in 2012, I almost lost a multi-million-pound business overnight, right? I mean, it was proper scary, like we like to say in England, squeaky bum time. It was just horrible. And I can tell you why. There was all kinds of things that happened at that point. But if I look at my business, one of the things that happened, and this has really affected my coaching, was as a business, we'd become really good at one or two things. We'd become great at email marketing. I mean, we were phenomenal at email marketing. We'd become really good at paid media, and we'd become good at content, right? These sorts of pillars. Ironically, all of them were marketing, and it meant that other areas of the business were getting neglected because we only did what we were good at. So we became siloed in these key areas, and this is one of the problems that I see in any e-commerce business that I've gone in and done coaching and consulting. Is it's very easy to get siloed into what you know and into what you do well. And so the reason we've done the mastermind the way we have is to go, hang on a minute, guys, we have to think about these areas as well. This area over here, like fulfillment, might not be as sexy, but it actually pays you dividends just to spend a couple of the weeks of the year thinking about it, because you'll be amazed at what happens over here. We did that with one company, went in, did the whole coaching program with them, went around the framework. And after the second day, I sat down with the MD of that business, and I said to him, listen, if I show you a way where you will make an extra $1 million a year without changing hardly anything, how much of that money would you give me to tell you? And it was a bit tongue in cheek. He was already paying me, and he said, nothing, I'm already paying you. Tell me anyway. And I said, sure. And it was all to do with his fulfillment and the way that they did it. If they just tweaked one or two small things, that was worth $1 million a year to that company. $1 million, right? But because they got siloed into one or two areas, they'd not thought about that. And actually, when you go in and do coaching and consulting, spoiler alert, none of what I do is rocket science. It's not, do you know what I mean? I'm not like some kind of super genius in e-commerce. All I do is I ask questions that they've not been asking themselves, because most people get siloed into one or two areas. And so, sorry, that's a long-winded answer to your question. That's why we sort of do it that way.
No, that's actually perfect. And I like everything you said. It's super interesting because I think it's a lesson from someone that knows a lot and has been around for a long, long time. So I think that we should all listen to what you're saying. And 100%, I think that we are all structured naturally in a way that we are comfortable with, what they call the comfort zone. We stay
Mhm,
here and that's what we do well, so we want to stay there. But these things is like we ignore them as the pop-ups,
mhm,
the pop-ups on the screen. It's like we just act as if they are not there, but things are happening and you need to pay attention to your team, to your team members, to every single part of your business, from your, I don't know, from your role. Of course, as you
yeah.
grow, you might have people doing the day-to-day work for you, but you still need to pay attention to the key areas of your business. So that's great advice, actually. Um, Let me ask you to wrap up, because you've been really really great. You delivered a lot of value, and I really enjoyed the conversation. Someone that's been around for such a long time as you might know a lot of people that respect and follow in the industry. Could you name a few?
Yeah, there's so many people, and again, it depends what part you want to sort of get involved. You've got a great podcast, we were talking earlier about Daniel. Daniel's got a great, so there's a lot of people with podcasts. Chloe Thomas here in the UK, she's phenomenal. Got a great, so I listen to all the e-commerce podcasts, and that is just great, just great people. But I think the people that have had the biggest impact on me um, are people who are business leaders, but they're outside the e-commerce space. And this is interesting for me because you take someone like a good friend of mine, Simon O'Shaughnessy. All these years, I still pay, I don't even know, to be fair. But Simon and I will chat once a month. In fact, I was talking to him last night, right? He's based in New Zealand. I'm based in the UK. He did live in England. In fact, I used to work for him years ago. And he has had some of the biggest impact on our business, but he's not an e-commerce guy, right? Because in other words, he's not getting siloed, maybe like I would. And I like the fact he has a much bigger bird's eye view. And so I tend to like people like that are going to challenge me to think about my character. The hardest thing to do is to work on yourself, right? So I tend to like people, and so I'll listen to podcasts around that sort of stuff, if that makes sense. But yeah, people like Simon would be just top of my list. He's an absolute legend.
It does. And do you have any favorite books? Could be business books or not.
I, how long have you got, Brian? Right? I'm an avid reader. I read an awful lot of books, just because I can, or not because I can. That's the wrong way to say it. I read a lot of books because I love to learn, right? And so at the moment, I'm reading Dan Pink's that I think it's called The Power of Regret or something like that, which is a fascinating book and turns the whole idea of regret on its head. We've all got regrets as human beings, and he sort of dives into that and the psychology of it, and it's quite an interesting take. It's quite an interesting sort of think on it. So yeah, there's books like that. There's what else am I reading at the moment? Jack Reacher novels. I quite like, just reading novels not related to anything. You can take your brain out of a box and take your brain out and put it in a box and just forget about life and get wrapped up in a thriller novel. So yeah, I'll read Jack Reacher. I read books about everything, from faith to fitness. I read a lot of fitness books. Really big fan of keeping fit and staying strong, and so I'm always reading around those kind of topics. So yeah, how long have you got? I could give you a big long list of
You
books
know
to
why
read.
I
That's for
asked?
sure.
That's great. Yeah, I asked for two reasons. The real one and the other one. The other one probably is, of course, is real, but I'm kidding. But it's for the audience to know who you follow, who you read and all stuff, because I'm interested in them getting that value as well and go check them out. But the selfish question comes from a different place, which is that I cannot I read the same thing over and over. I cannot get, we passed that point. It's like this is probably Amazon's fault. It's not mine. No, I mean the Kindle. I'm sorry. I know many people like reading on paper. I prefer reading on the Kindle. It's much easier for me. And I finish a book and then all the recommendations come there. I listen to podcasts and they recommend books. So I'm in the same, spinning the same circle all over again. So I ask this so I can get more things to read, right?
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. It's I'm the same way. I prefer to read on Kindle. And then to be fair, I don't actually own a Kindle. I just read it on my phone because my phone's always with me and I can keep up with stuff. And sometimes there's an app. What's the name of the app? I think it's called Shortform. I'll find it for you now. That I use. It's bad I don't remember the name. I use it all the time. Yeah, Shortform. And it's this app I'll show on the screen. Shortform. You can get it. I assume you can get it on Android as well as iOS. And what Shortform does, you can see here. Look, so this is the homepage. And for those of you listening, it's an app with books basically that you can read within half an hour. It's like it's not a one-page summary. They give you a one-page summary, and then if you want to go further, they do actually quite involved summaries. And I tend to read those now before I buy a book. And that's a great way to sort of find new stuff that gets recommended. And you kind of go, well, before I buy it and before I start it and forget about it, I'm just going to spend 10 minutes going through the app to figure out if this is something that's going to work for me and something that I'd be interested in. So I can highly recommend that app as a way to help you get into it.
It's exactly what I need. So thank you, because it was the best answer I got so far. I get books and I love them, but this is like a life savior because I kind of think I knew that these kind of things existed, but I have never bumped into any. So I appreciate this. Thank you. Anyway, you've been great. You delivered a lot of value. So I hope that you guys listening enjoyed that as well. So where can people go to learn more about you and the company Orion?
Yeah, all the links to me, to the companies, to the cohort we talked about, I did a post on Instagram. If you go through my Instagram feed, somewhere is a post on 8 must-read books. I think I also put it on Pinterest. I think it's the only thing I've ever put on Pinterest, where I talk about books that I read. All of those links you can find on my website, which is mattedmondson.com. So just head to mattedmondson.com and you'll find everything you need.
That's awesome. As always, you guys listening there will be show notes, so you can go find them if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or any other platform. You can go to fitgrowthmachine.com and find the interview, and there you will see a summary of this, and of course the resources linked at the bottom. Matt, you've been great. Thanks a lot for your time today.
Oh, Brian, thanks for having me on. It's been fantastic. Really appreciate it.
I appreciate it.